So I figured, you know what? One thing I don't talk about terribly often is where on earth did Camp Veritas come from, right? Where did it come from? Why do we have it? What's the point? I grew up in a church-going family. I'm one of 9 kids. Grew up in Westchester County in Mount Kisco. But my life in the church was going to Mass, right? It was sacramental. But I was finding a lot of kids were not being retained in the faith, even at that time, 30 years ago, after they were confirmed. There seemed to be a disconnect with the sacramental prep and then the sacramental action of these kids and their faith. And that was then. And in my class at St. Francis of Assisi in Mount Kisco at the time, we probably had about 250 to 300 confirmandi. And I think if you were to go there today, you probably have about 60, right? So you just see this happening over time. But I saw it when I was there. And I'm not a man who believes in accidents. I came around to really falling deeply in love with God around 9th and 10th grade when I was in high school. And part of that is when I fall in love with God, I believe that every minute of every day has a reason and a choice. Am I choosing heaven at this minute or not? And with that, every encounter I have with a person, every situation I'm in, I look at it and I learn from it. One of the things I learned in 9th grade was what works. I went to this Protestant camp on the West Coast, called Hume Lake. It was out there since the 1950s. It's in Sequoia National Park. And they have 2,000 kids each week, all summer long, for 10 straight weeks with a 5-year waiting list. That's 20,000 youth going to a camp out on the West Coast. And it's a very generic Protestant ecumenical camp. I mean, there's really just one question at the end. Do you believe in Jesus, and is he your Lord and Savior? Yep, okay, we're done, next. But I saw the methodology of it, the effectiveness of it, and I said, that's interesting. And about the same time, I was attending Youth 2000, which is a very Eucharistically centered Catholic event, run by, at the time, the CFR Friars, Father Benedict Rochelle's guys from the Bronx, and the sisters at the time. And I saw an intense weekend from Friday to Sunday where the Eucharist was front and center, and the kids were immersed in the presence of Christ himself in the Eucharist. And I've always thought to myself from that time, I said, boy, this is pretty effective as well, right? What if the two of those had a melding together, where it was a week long like Hume Lake, but had the Eucharist at its center? Imagine what can happen. Imagine if the Master himself, the Lord himself, the King of the universe, the Prince of Peace, the Alpha and Omega, was the teacher of the program in the Eucharist, right? What would happen then? And who am I compared to that? And so these things, were coming through my head. Also, as I was growing up, I also have been very exposed to the pervasive thought of our time, which is something called the religion of self. Okay? The religion of self is, I want to do what I want to do when I want to do it because I want to do it. Right? This pervasive thought is now basically no different than what the apple was giving us, in Genesis 3. You could be like God and you'll know what's right and wrong. It's alluring. It's seductive. If you ask any teen today, boy, you can have anything with the press of a button. Right? Who needs actual relationships? I have 1,000 friends on Facebook. I get my fix every time I get an email or a text. Right? There is this sense, this is the real battle. This is the real enemy, right? This is what's consuming the soul, which is, I want to be God to me. You see this within our own Catholic Church. I'm a Catholic, but I don't believe in this, I don't believe in that. That's pervasive. That's now. That's here. I was once asked by a Catholic priest, a Monsignor, he goes, Ryan, you're a layman. I'm at a Vicariate meeting trying to talk about camp. He goes, why are people not going to camp? Or why are people not going to church? And I said, Monsignor, didn't you know everybody goes to heaven? And he thought about it, and the room thought about it. I said, look, I've been going to Mass forever. I've heard the word hell like 5 times in my life in the church building, right? And I'm not talking fire and brimstone. I'm talking just existence of. I said, the problem is when everyone goes to heaven, right? Well, then why do they need you? And why do they need the sacraments? And why do they need the church? And by the way, do we actually have a free will? And what's the meaning of our life? Do we have a choice? Are we going to have to be with God forever? Are we slaves? Perhaps our minute right now is to make a choice for Him. Where do we want to go? Who do we want to be with? Do we want to enter in this kingdom of heaven with this family? That's perhaps what our meaning is. Until we start talking about that choice, until we start talking about the value of a soul, then we're lost. How much is a soul worth? And so I stopped talking about it, and I just started saying, well, we got to put this thing in action because I know it'll work. So I wrote to Cardinal Egan. Cardinal Egan, I got a great idea. We should set up this Catholic camp at the Eucharist at its center. It should be about a week long. Here's a couple of models that work. And he writes me back, great, I'll pray for you as you start this camp. And I looked at it and like, what the hell do I know about starting a camp? You know, I mean, I got kids, I got a job. I didn't even go to camp as a kid, really. I mean, I visited the one on the West Coast, but, you know, I'm never, you know, I don't even like teenagers. You know, like, what are we talking about? So I wrote him again, no, seriously, like, this would work, you know, I mean, I think you misunderstood what I was saying. You know, you have people, you have money, you have departments. This is something that I know will work. Get back another letter from Cardinal Egan. Again, I say to you, I'll pray for you in your venture in this camp. Well, there is a moment of pause there, right? Now I have to make the choice. You put up or you shut up. How much is a soul worth? And so I had to make that choice. I said, all right, I made a deal with God. And I'm a man of my word. I say what I mean what I say. I said, I will do my absolute best. My absolute best. And I did. And you'd think that'd be easy, right? But literally, I had no idea what I was doing. I first kind of presented it to the people around me. They thought I lost my mind, all right? I mean, my own brother says, you're going to have a camp that's a week long that people have to pay for on their summer break. Well, who's going to staff it? It's all volunteer. All volunteer. You think people won't show up to the spaghetti dinner on Friday night at the parish? They're going to give up a week of their life at a Catholic camp with teenagers? Good luck, buddy, right? He goes, let me tell you. He goes, I tried to start a youth group at our parish, and I put out thousands of flyers, and, you know, everyone come to the first meeting, and he goes, I spent all this time, and I told the priest, you know, we got to order at least 15 pizzas for the amount of people who are going to show up. The priest, who's been around the block once or twice, is like, why don't we order 2? If we need more, we can always order more, right? And of course, after months of putting the thing together, there's only 3 people who showed up, my brother and 2 of my sisters, okay? But the point is he's like, what, you know, what's the chance of this happening? I said, I don't know, but I said I was going to try, right? And once I started going, I started basically every day after work, I would literally just, you know, knock on doors and you know, knock on parish doors and sell the idea to priests. And, you know, a lot of people are like, yeah, it's kind of a good idea, but where do you even start? I had to go and find a site, right? And so I spent a full year, every 3 minutes, finding sites with the help of ultimately my family, after they decided I was crazy, then decided, well, what the hell, let's join them. So my dad, you know, was making a website, we're incorporating the thing, you know, just so at least there's some body to, how does someone sign up to this thing? And then you know, the friars initially said, you know, we'll sign on to give you some credibility, right? Because it can't just be Camp Ryan, who's going to that, you know? And, you know, so it was just getting these pieces. Bishop Lagonegro was instrumental in that time, right? He actually, it was funny, you know, he picked up his phone when I called down there, and I'm like, don't you have a secretary? Ironically, he picks up his own phone almost 60-70% of the time when you call his office. Anyway, so we're having dinner, and he didn't look at me like I was crazy, right? And he goes, what can I do to help? I was like, how do I know? I don't even know what I need, you know? So we're going through the thing. And the camp would consist of a 1-week experience, co-ed, middle through high school, all right? The reason for that is that's the age of identity. That's the age when confirmation ends, and it's like, what do we do next, right? There's a big void. There's nothing to do after confirmation unless your parish happens to have a youth group, which most don't. Right? And you're hoping the kids are staying in the faith. But the point is that they have to be exposed to the Eucharist, to Christ himself, before they, quote, graduate from the faith. And so it's volunteer. It is absolutely unapologetically Catholic. Every day, rosary, every day, mass, every day. The kids can join morning prayer with the religious there. They're exposed to priests, the religious of our faith. Seminarians are there. So absolutely Catholic, absolutely Eucharistic. Again, absolutely Eucharistic. So we go through the whole year, and we get to the point, and even the site, Camp Lakota was our first site. It's a Jewish camp. Holds about 300 total people at the time. That's what they thought they could hold. Now we have 700. But at 300 was their max. And then they're like, how many people are coming? And I'm like, well, I would keep your whole staff, because if 2 churches show up to this thing, we'll fill it, right? So here's the moment where I have to tell Camp Lakota whether we're actually going to have camp, okay? Which is the day before. Guess how many enrollments there were at that point? A dozen. 12 kids. 12 total kids, okay? Guess how much staff we had? About 15. Can you imagine the kid walking around the camp with his own person? And the camp is not like the size of this room. It's a college campus size place. It's huge. Talk about, I was mortifiedly embarrassed. Okay? Mortified and embarrassed. And I actually went to bed. And that night I just went into prayer. And I told God flat out, Lord, I'm so sorry. I tried my absolute best, and I completely failed. Okay? And now God doesn't talk to me very often. And I've actually, it's a funny thing, he's in constant dialogue with me if I just listen. But there's a burning bush moment, right? I don't know if you guys have ever had these burning bush moments, but this was mine, all right? The second I said, I'm sorry, and I failed, a movie went off in my head. Tens of thousands of people, all I can see is the backs of their heads, kneeling in front of the Eucharist, okay? And it's one sight after another. It was like flashing through, right? And it was the most ridiculous thought I've ever had in my life, because it was the furthest thing from my thought. I literally laughed out loud because it was so past imagining. And I said, Lord, if that's your plan, we better get on it, because I got 12. And he asked me 3 questions. Ryan, whose time is it? Well, it's yours, Lord. Whose money is it? It's yours, Lord. Whose life is it? My life is yours, Lord. Well, then whose camp is this? Well, it's yours, Lord. And it was like, you dummy. You already won. I realized at that moment, my measure of success was completely wrong. Completely wrong. My measure of success was how many kids? How many souls? And I realized at that minute, that is not the way I win. The only way I win is the yes I can give you today with my will. The rest is your problem. And from that minute, it has begun. So I went to Bishop Lagonegro the next day. I said, I had a burning bush moment. I told him about it, and Bishop listened. And then he had, I don't know if you ever saw Lord of the Rings. Gandalf, has a moment with Frodo where he gets big and the room fills with him. Now, you all know Bishop Lagonegro. He's a soft, squishy, lovable guy. He's quiet and docile generally and really easy to get, He got that moment of bishop authority. He sits up in his chair and he goes, are you having a camp or not? And I said, in my movie screen, I also said, what am I supposed to do? And the word obey came right nice and clear. I said, I'm just going to obey. And he goes, are you having a camp or not? And he pushed my will to say, yeah, we're going to have this. I don't know how. He goes, well, what can I do to help you? Still don't know, right? But we had that first year of camp. There was about 55 kids, right? About 20 staff, and thank God, because that was the right number. We didn't know what we were doing, right? How do you set this up? How much can a kid handle? What are the logistics and so forth? In front of you, you have this kind of a packet thing, on your table that shows our growth through the past 10 years, right? And 10 years have come by. What we do at the camp is we play and pray to the point where the kids are receiving not only the sacramental stuff of the church all day, but they're receiving it in a way that they can handle it. So Jesus himself had to do a miracle every 45 minutes to keep the people's attention, okay? Because that's our limit. and they had to get up and stretch and watch him do those miracles before he went on, right? I'm not having people raised from the dead, but they can play dodgeball, laser tag, and go to a lake. And so they're able to receive more, but they're getting 6+ hours a day of prayer and of instruction by the best of our faith. These are the people who do it for a living. So we have the best speakers teaching everybody, right? And so, it's endorsed by our cardinal. Nolan's been there a number of times. The bishops, Bishop Peter Burns, highly involved, literally comes almost to every single thing we do. And he goes, quietly arrives, and just hears confessions. I mean, the guy's a saint. And right now we have 5 camps. They've not only the 2 large ones locally, we have one in Maryland, we have one in Ireland, we opened one in Florida this year, and they're all going to sell out this year. All right, there's 1,600 kids now coming to camp this summer, and there's about 400 volunteer staff. The volunteer staff are my inspiration because we're all on the same journey. They're all saying individual yeses. There are so many things far beyond anything I can do. I'm a technological idiot, okay, and I have tech people. I'm a handshake moron. I have Jen to do that for me now. She's my voice right out there. But everyone is using their skills for this good, whatever they are. I have Chris over there, he's running CYO. Guess what? We started a CYO portion of Veritas now. We have a dance instructor giving a week of her time, coming and teaching the kids dance at the mountain. So they have a dance camp within the camp as part of their activities. Wherever you have a talent, it's being utilized. That is what we have, and I have the honor of just saying, watching these yeses. Last year, I'm stumbling in my car after the 4th camp with a seminarian who's one of my directors. And I said, Matt, thank you. Thank you for helping all summer. And he looked at me dead in the eyes and he said, Ryan, not for nothing, I'm not doing this for you. All right? That was the answer. That was the answer. He isn't doing it for me. We all have the same boss. The Knights of Columbus, I have to say, I've been honored with the amount of support they've given to this program throughout. They have literally, we can't supplement every kid financially. The camp is very affordable. $400 for a week of sleepaway camp, $400 for a week of sleepaway camp. Your average camps, in the world are $1,500 to $2,000 a week. Okay, $400. That covers our staff who's attending for free. Right? I can't say come and volunteer a week of your life and pay to do it. Right? And so that's at a very affordable price, but it's still difficult for some families. They couldn't send their kid otherwise when they're living paycheck to paycheck. They certainly can't send 2 or 3. I've been blessed to know that the Knights of every parish, I don't even call them, but I know they have my back. Because when these kids call them, they are always said, sure. The Knights always reach into their pocket, $20, $30, and combined, they got the $400 that kid's going. Parishes, Knights, counselors are 10 kids worth, 5 kids worth, whatever it's going to be. The Knights have been there. The camp itself, when the kids leave, are starving for the Eucharist. They're starving for that continued interaction and encounter with Christ in the Eucharist. They want to be with Him. And we've said it's enough. You can't go for a full year. So let's start, let's join Fearless Ministries, which was formerly the Youth 2000, same event that brought me in 30 years ago, right? Fearless Ministries are now in parishes where it's, through the weekend. And the Knights not only donate the food, but they show up in person. They're dishing out that food, and they're wearing the shirts. That leaves a mark, right? If the Knights of Columbus are ever going to get into the next generation, if the Knights of Columbus want to grow in their membership and their service and all their goals, this is the farm system for the Knights of Columbus. That's where the kids are, right? And when I talk to these kids, and I acknowledge the Knights at the end of one of these weekends or camp or wherever it's going to be, I say, look, heroes aren't the ones that say, look at me. It's not that football player doing the dance in the end zone. The heroes are the ones that just sat up with you in perpetual adoration last night, praying for you at 2 a.m. The hero is the guy who woke up this morning and made your breakfast and is serving it to you now. He's not doing it for you. He's doing it because he's answering the greatest call, which is yes to the Lord. And that happens to be serving and loving you. It's those women who are quietly behind the scenes, making those calls, putting out all the advertisements, fixing the computer, for crying out loud. It's supporting their guys going to that breakfast that morning, going shopping and all that. Heroes. And that's what these kids are exposed to with the Knights of Columbus. And the Knights of Columbus understand that there is a war at hand. You are Knights of Columbus. And that war is for souls. There's no greater commodity in the world than a soul. Nothing you do, nothing you spend money on, nothing you breathe about is more important than the souls you're encountering with your family, with your community, with your church. The Knights understand this, and they understand the stakes. I mean, the funny thing with the Lord in judgment, he is the entire judge and jury. There's good news and bad news to that, okay? The good news is he knows exactly the test that he's given you. He knows exactly those moments of yes that you've had a chance to say yes or no to. He knows your disposition and those moments in your life where you were when it came to that yes. The good news is he's a father that loves us. He's a father that longs for us to be with him. He's a father who is rooting for us, as any parent would to a child, rooting for them. Here's the bad news. Can't BS him. He calls it. He knows what your 100% is. And he doesn't grade on the curve. That's startling. I have to go to bed every day and say, was it 100% today? Was it 100? Not 90, not 95, 100. And how do we fix that tomorrow? When I was sitting once with Cardinal Dolan, the first time we went to camp, and I was telling him, again, I talked about camp with people because my vision is rather large. The vision isn't just the region. If God only showed me 500 kids, I'd be done. The problem is he showed me the top of the mountain. He didn't tell me how we're going to get there. He didn't tell me how long it was going to take. He didn't tell me if I'd actually ever see it. I might be dead. Right? But he showed that. I know it is the destiny of this program. I also know if it works here in New York, and it's working in Maryland, and it's working in Florida, and it's working in Ireland, well, it would work in St. Louis, it would work in Denver, Seattle, LA. Guess what's in LA, Denver, Seattle, and St. Louis? Knights of Columbus councils. This is the time. This is the battle of our time. This is the choice of our time. We got to lay it out. We got to lay it out for souls, the things that matter. When the Cardinal heard this, and I'm a fairly extreme guy, I guess, he didn't laugh. He goes, how far are you willing to go? And I said, how much is a soul worth? One. It was worth the blood of the Lamb for one. It was worth God himself on that cross that we celebrated a week ago for one. How far are we willing to go? And that's the question I have for you today. So, thank you for your assistance in this journey. Thank you for your willingness to grab these eternal souls and plant them at that foot of the cross. There is nothing more valuable this council does. Nothing. Nothing. And I thank you for your continued support.